and welcome back to the ABCs of ERP and beyond. And in today's episode, we are diving into important considerations for transitioning from Dynamics Navision or NAV to Acumatica. So as we know, support for NAV has ended and many businesses are looking for a modern solution that meets their needs. So we'll explore key topics around this, including the shift from on-prem to SaaS models, the importance of data cleansing as always, choosing a vendor with experience in both systems, and we'll discuss how Acumatica can offer more robust workflows in a modern ERP system over something as ancient as NAV. So as ever, I am joined with my esteemed co-host for this discussion, Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
Hey Peter, happy to be back. This episode is a kind of close to me. I've been in the dynamic space for a very long time and understand NAV in its prime days. I mean, NAV has about, I want to say, 1.3 million users in the market, worldwide, that is. Probably countless of company implementations out there. So it's still a good solution for some companies, but as you just mentioned, Microsoft is no longer supporting it as of NAV, Dynamics NAV 2018, and we all know that its replacement, NAV's replacement in the current market is Business Central out there. Business Central is a really great solution as well, but some companies, after using NAV, want to change, and they're not particularly looking at, I want to go down its replacement Business Central. I want to see what else is in the marketplace and what else is out there that could potentially do more than what NAV was limited to. So a good option is Acumatica. And Acumatica is another solution that's in the SMB market, but I feel that has slightly more robust functionality. And those companies that are looking to move to Acumatica, right, have to carefully consider the steps that we'll outline today, right? Points in reviewing that internally to prepare for a successful Acumatica implementation. And NAV had a lot of capabilities, had a lot of things it did. It did really well too. It did manufacturing really well. It had a really, what I would say, abbreviated CRM, but it did that well. It was basic, but in a sense that you were able to do what you want with it. So probably most NAV implementations have had some sort of customization associated to it, whether that's going to be reports, whether that's going to be business logic changes, right, or whatnot. But it was really easy. You had Cal code to customize NAV. Most NAV environments, if not all, I want to say, probably are on-premise, right? So that's another consideration. You're like, hey, I'm on this on-premise solution and I'm ready to get off of it and jump on a SaaS solution and kind of get a product that you're more supported. Right? Microsoft obviously is not supporting it anymore. So it's important when you decide that you're going to move forward with Acumatica, how to prepare for a successful move to Acumatica. I wouldn't really consider this like a quote unquote upgrade, like version to version you would do with the same publisher. This is actually a move right away from NAV and like a re-implementation of your business processes and data into a new ERP, setting yourself up for, a high ROI for the next 10 to 15 years, right? So excited to talk about this, and I think this one doesn't get a lot of attention, through different platforms, and it's important to understand these points before you embark on the journey. And there's probably some points that we haven't thought of, but we're more than happy to learn from other users out there, companies out there that have kind of gone through this, and where we could continue to expand our knowledge base.
This is a really interesting topic because we recently shot one which was looking at NAV to BC, and they're kind of, well, it's the same manufacturer of the ERP, Whereas
Yep.
here, we're jumping to a completely new one. So there's a little few things that are similar in both, but for
Yep.
this one, there's a couple of things you'd need to consider because of
Yep.
that. And especially when we're talking about this first point that you touched upon, is the fact that NAV is so super old,
Mm-hmm.
and almost all of the implementations of that is on prem. We know that Acumatica is not, it's a cloud based ERP sold as a SaaS model. So,
Mm-hmm.
point number one here, let's talk about the considerations of moving on prem to cloud. Without diving too deep, because we could go for ages on this. We know we've got separate episodes on this, but what should
Yep.
we really be considering when we know we're going to do this?
Yep.
We're going to go through a new implementation. What's your kind of highlights on on-prem to SaaS?
Well, I think it's right away you're going to see 50%, if not more, of reallocation of your IT time, right? And it's no longer that you need somebody monitoring that server anymore immediately, right? It's going to help protect you from security threats out there immediately, avoid any downtime. So, those in my head are pretty key points where it's kind of like set it and forget it. You could always be guaranteed that your system's going to be up and running anywhere in the world. No longer need a VPN. I think you could reduce the number of software solutions you need to buy. That's a cost savings, and that the system is going to be up all the time. NAV, um, there is some quirkiness to that. If you implemented custom code and it was like really heavy business logic changes, and you wanted to push it in, you could push it in, but it may not immediately get effective. You have to restart the server. You have to restart the
Yeah,
database and compile the data, right? And do these type of things that, sometimes made it where you had to take the system down while everybody was working, um, and cause some issues there versus now, doing it more on a SaaS solution basis. You essentially could put it on a timer and say, all right, this piece of
mm,
code, I wanted to go and, become effective in this database at this time, and go ahead and run um, restart of the database, right? You could do all these things kind of from an admin perspective, just at your desk, without having to worry about, that server that's hidden in this dungy closet, right next to your
hmm
office. So I think that's, a really important point is the on-premise to SaaS model is it's a mind shift change. It
yeah,
really is. I had a customer that just couldn't get away from the fact that SaaS, although a little bit more, you're paying a monthly subscription, right, for SaaS, it's fully managed, but they couldn't get away from that. And they said, well, no, I have a system for 15 years, 20 years. It's a DOS-based system. I have a system that I'm going to use for a long time, and I'm not going to change. So I don't believe in SaaS. I don't believe in going that route. Well, there's two things there, right? I understand the standpoint that you may not make any changes in the system and you're going to use the system as is the whole time, right? Um, but you're losing out on a lot of benefits. The publisher is really adding a lot of value now in rolling out new functionality, in understanding, your business, getting your feedback, um, all these different things that could help your business even more than what your current system is doing now, because you should be looking this as a more long-term kind of relationship with your
yeah,
publisher and your business. And the second part of it is the IT part of it, that you no longer have to manage all these other things. You can free yourself up to do revenue generating tasks. To maintain a server is not a revenue generating task for the most part, right? You have a small business and you have like 3, 4 employees. Now you could turn around and have that IT person build you a better Power App, for example, to communicate with your customers better. Now that's going to help you generate more revenue at the end of the day than having to worry about spending 15, 20 hours a week on maintaining a server,
hmm yep.
right?
This is this is one of the key areas for me. Is that kind of that? It's not so much as cost savings, but it's better use of your cash. You're buying, say, 40 hours a week of an IT person. Are you getting the most ROI from those 40 hours?
Yep.
When they're having to reboot the server because it's gone down, or something's broken during the night, or you've got a patch to update, which means kicking everyone out of the system. That's certainly not really that value add there.
Yep.
Yes, one could argue at least, it's system maintenance. We have to do it, otherwise we can't process orders. But at the
Right.
same time, just take that out of the business and put that onto the ERP manufacturer themselves, and then you think about what you can actually get that person to do. There's so many great options, as you said, like build power apps. How can we get more intimate with our customers? How can we be more customer facing than kind of back end maintenance? So there's huge benefits there. For me, the other one is just sheer accessibility.
Yeah.
One of the things I've
Mm-hmm.
heard when we talk about going to a cloud-based system is, oh no, what if my internet drops?
Yep.
Like we've seen out there what happens when systems go down, especially in like the travel industry, I guess. Like it can
Yep.
ground flights and cancel flights and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
This is not on the same scale. We're just talking about your local internet connection.
Yeah.
Because when you objectively look at the back end side and you go, right, what's the uptime of a cloud based ERP? And it's like, how many nines in a row can we go? It's like 99.9999%. And I think they actually measure it to how many
Oh really?
nines. There's a scale
Okay.
that they use
Okay.
of uptime.
Mm-hmm.
But then you say on the other side, how many times is your on-prem server gone down? Oh,
Yep.
it could be once a month when they have to apply updates, or yeah, we came in one day and it was just offline, and took our outsourced IT like 3 hours to get us back to logging in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're talking about a cloud-based ERP going down for 3 hours over the course of a couple of years.
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
so there's that. But in terms of like local internet these days, how often does your internet really drop out? Very,
Yeah.
very rarely. And even so, this is just you accessing it via your local internet. So people can tether to work phones. There's other ways you can get back online.
Yep.
Or really just go down to the local coffee shop. Like you've already got the accessibility. Maybe your sales team are already on the road. They're probably logged into a local Starbucks and can
Mm-hmm.
still continue to work.
Yep.
So that's really not a barrier of entry onto moving onto a SaaS model. So
Right.
those two are huge for me: accessibility and reallocation of your employees, the
Yeah.
value that they bring.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to add, Acumatica only sells a SaaS subscription. They no longer sell a perpetual license anymore. Um, you could do private cloud, but it's still going to be a SaaS subscription. So,
Mm.
and most ERPs now only do SaaS. They don't even do perpetual anymore, where you could buy the software outright, host it on your local server. So that's another thing to consider is it's going to be hard for anyone that's looking to move out of NAV but stay on-premise to find an on-premise solution.
Because I know that there's still some ERPs that on-prem is still available. Maybe there's
Mhm.
an industry specific regulation
Yeah,
that
right.
that particular ERP can't meet yet for cloud-based. So on-prem is still a solution. But yes,
Exactly.
that is an important point for Acumatica.
Hmm. Hmm.
Point number two, big one here, always is a big one when we talk about ERP migrations or implementations, is data cleaning. It's so crucial to have your data in a good enough state that you can operate effectively, and your ERP implementation is a success, because you're going to have a shiny new system. The database is going to be empty. You
Yeah,
only ever want to put in the gold level stuff that's accurate, up to date, trustworthy data. You certainly don't want to be porting in a load of crap, because it's
right.
not going to solve any of your solutions. So
No.
this is important regardless. But I think it's a little bit different, as we were saying earlier before we started recording, is we're moving from NAV to Acumatica. Um, and you're probably moving from a NAV, as we said, super old.
Hmm.
So the tables will not match. They're not going to be the same at all.
Right.
We know that NAV has hundreds upon hundreds of tables in the database, lots
Hmm.
of duplicated data. So lots of areas where there's opportunity for inaccurate data, missing data, or simply out of date data. So this is such an important part, because not only have you got the normal importance of cleaning up, correcting mistakes, filling in missing entries, but it's also a case of mapping this now into a completely different ERP where table structures aren't going to be the same. The
Mm-hmm.
connectivity between tables aren't going to be the same. And even the terminology. So I know we've got our next point coming up about vendors, but this is an important point because you need to see, like, what do we now call this in our system? Do we call an item number in the new
Mm-hmm.
system, or is it just called SKU code? Or so there's all of this matching up, and you're never going to be able to get there if you don't have super clean, nice data to be able to
Right.
then work with your vendor to
Mm-hmm.
put what you need into your new system.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up a great example, item number. It's called item number in NAV, and Acumatica is called stock item, right? And here's another consideration, right? It's going to go part and parcel with our next point, is Acumatica allows you to configure how long you want your item numbers to be. So if you're always limited in NAV to only 20 characters, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is the standard, but
Yeah.
Acumatica will allow you to be 30 characters, will allow you to be 10 characters, right? You could configure what they call
Right.
segmented keys in Acumatica and really define what's going to work for you. So just because you had to do something a certain way in NAV because your data, right, because of the constraints of how the data was set up, well, that's going to be different in Acumatica.
Mm.
So you want to first study what that looks like, and once you understand that, is clean the data. I think cleaning the data too early could be dangerous because you could bring some of that bad information, right? Or some of those bad workflows and processes into Acumatica, whereas kind of understanding Acumatica first and going through best practices in Acumatica could help you define and decide whether that data is usable, or now you have this what I call opportunity to change the data to help the business grow, right, in that industry. So
Mm.
it's data cleaning, but not in my eyes, not from the sense of let's just go and start cleaning our data, you know, taking customers out that we no longer use, taking vendors out we no longer use, or discontinuing item numbers that we use. But this is more like, well, was this data usable?
Mm.
And was the data in the right structure? Now we have this chance with Acumatica. How can we clean or improve our data before we put into Acumatica?
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
there's a couple ways. I think there's two ways to look at this, and um, and you need to do your due diligence first to understand Acumatica's obviously um, uh, capabilities before coming to the conclusion on how much you could clean or how much you could upgrade the data to meet Acumatica's workflows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even in your existing system, it can be quite difficult to decipher some of these columns in tables and stuff and say, oh, I don't know, is it important? Is it needed? We know that there's a whole bunch of columns that are get a default value, but it's sometimes difficult to work that out because you might not be the same person that was around when NAV was first
Hmm.
implemented and decisions were made. So when
Right.
you export all of the data as just a data dump into Excel and you start analyzing or stepping through these tables during like the discovery phase or development phase with your ERP vendor, they if they don't know intimately the structure of NAV, they're going to be asking the questions like, what is that? Is that
Yeah.
important? What does that mean in that column? And if you
Hmm.
look down, you go, well, half of them are filled in and half aren't. We don't know. Does that
Yep.
mean it's important? Is this redundant, or is it something that was a business process that we used to do but we don't use anymore? Maybe it's like a
Right.
dimension value that got dropped
Hmm.
after a few years. Like we don't know. We don't know if it's important to us or not. So
Right.
um, it's this is worth spending quite a bit of time on ahead
Hmm.
of time if you can, because it's going to pay dividends later on and could make
Yep.
or break that ERP implementation a
Oh
success or
yeah.
not.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the ERP vendor experience a little bit more generally. Now we've covered that kind of the technical side of the data transition. So what else should we think about when we're moving from one environment of the Microsoft world over to Acumatica when we talk about vendors?
Yeah, I think you need a vendor that understands both. Understands both successfully, right? When you're moving to Acumatica, it's a whole different partner channel, essentially, right? So if the partner doesn't already resell Acumatica or resell NAV, they're not going to know NAV. Right? They're not going to know Navision. All they're going to know is Acumatica. So I would prefer, in my eyes, for a successful kind of move up to Acumatica is that you find an Acumatica partner that understands NAV, aka Business Central now, and Acumatica. So they understand both sides of the coin, they understand the architecture, and you can make decisions faster, right? And get implemented sooner than later. So it's important to because that vendor is going to know, okay, as I brought up, right? Item number is now stock item number. It's called stock item in Acumatica, and now you have the flexibility of changing the number of characters of item numbers, and now you
Mm,
also have the ability to use what's called item classes in Acumatica that essentially is the same as item category codes in NAV and Business Central, but it allows you to do a lot more to it and create those item category codes as specific item templates that auto assigns, right? GL accounts and
hmm
um, different preferences and attributes to items and things like that. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of um, good differences between both systems. Where Acumatica could help streamline your process, but you want a vendor that understands both sides for
Mm.
a successful launch of Acumatica.
You're going to be flying blind. You don't want to be in a position where they're saying, "Well, we know about our side. We can only tell you how Acumatica does it. We don't know how BC kind of
Exactly.
does it." And it's going to be
Exactly.
a slog. If you're in that position, you're going to talk
Yeah.
about support hours. You don't want to be using your support hours just constantly explaining, going down so many different rabbit holes of BC's architecture and how sorry,
Yeah.
on NAV's architecture and how it used to process things and stuff. That's just
Right. Right.
not a good use of your billable hours.
Well, true. And you don't want finger pointing to go on, right? You just want
Mm,
to point the finger at one person, one company, and be like, hey, this is what we're talking about, versus you start pointing the fingers at different parties, right? Your implementation is just going to delay longer, and you may not get the best final product at the end of the day. So
yeah.
that's also a consideration where you just have one source to blame, right? Or one source to congratulate at the end of the day, versus trying to coordinate like multiple parties to get this done correctly for you.
Okay, point number four. So re-implementation of workloads. So discovery phase, we're deep into it and we're assessing differences of our
Mhm.
processes and our workflows, how we do things in NAV. We're comparing this to the world of Acumatica. So what's the most important considerations here for workflows?
Yeah, workflows are a little bit more streamlined, I feel like, in the Acumatica space. They're logically laid out. Um, and like any other ERP, there's multiple ways to do a single type of transaction in the system. But it's now the ability to say, okay, our business has changed since we implemented NAV, right? We were implemented a certain way, and now we have so many steps that we have to do. But now we don't need that many steps. We understand our processes. Our processes mature, right? So we just want to do it, a way that's more efficient. So now in Acumatica, there's multiple ways to do some things. One quick example is like the quick ship process. So they have an order type on the sales order process, where if that specific order type is selected, you could quickly go ahead and with one keystroke do a pick, pack, and ship, literally one keystroke. You don't have to go through a warehouse shipment. You don't have to do the pick. You don't have to, kind of go through shipping it and then posting the pick, posting the warehouse shipment, then invoicing. Well, literally just one click that you could do, right? More batch processing options available to you, um, including invoicing, batch shipments, other type of batch processes that you could think of essentially. And one thing that you probably are always excited to talk about, Peter, is dashboards. And the reporting side of it, I mean, is just phenomenal, right? And that this kind of goes to, if you have your data set up to support Acumatica and its transactional, right, storage of that data correctly, then you could take advantage of the powerful reporting tools that they have. There's a number of different automation options that there is. So this is really taking a step back. This whole section here, re-implementation of our workflows, is saying, well, we've been doing something a certain way. Let's just kind of brainstorm here, for all our different departments, how could we do things better? Because everyone has that, right? Everyone thinks about that all the time. They think about, well, I have to press these five keys all the time, and it's kind of annoying, right? I don't want to press these five keys or go to these five screens all the time, right? They're thinking it, but they're maybe not just saying it, right? Or the company stopped investing in NAV because they feel like, oh, it's not supported by Microsoft, so we're not going to invest any more money into the product anymore. But it's important now to kind of bring that conversation back up and say, well, how can we do our processes better, right? Because then finding a good vendor, setting your data up correctly, right? You understand how those workflows operate in the new system, so you can roll that out successfully.
Yeah. And some of this is just moving the workflows from a manual process to an automated process. As you
Right,
said, like clicking the 5 buttons, I have to do it every single time. Well, maybe that's done behind the scenes. So it's like almost a removal of a workflow.
right,
Yes, it's still done. It's done in the back end, and you need to know what's going on, I guess, in the back end. But to be able to then get rid of these types of workflows off of people's desks, just let the system handle that for you. That's
right,
so powerful,
right.
isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah, it really is. Um, but it's looking at, okay, it's time to get off of NAV, and it's time to revisit our business again and find these gaps or blind spots that NAV's created or we've created because as a result of our business processes that we implemented NAV. And now let's close those gaps and those blind spots. So, we could increase our margins, right? Have happier employees, um, and be, have the technology stack that's going to help you report on your business better for the
Mm,
next 10, 15 years.
yeah. I think the my tip, I guess, for this bit is to really challenge each other, challenge the business when you're looking at the workflows, and really think about: do we actually need to do that anymore? Or is
Yeah.
this a redundant thing that we've always done? Um, or really challenge it when you might get kind of end users or people closest to the work going, I must have the ability to print this document,
Hmm.
because the DRP vendor could go, okay, this is obviously something that they need. It's an important
Right.
business process. We need to make sure that they can print to PDF or print to any
Hmm.
network printer. But then you
Hmm.
find out they print it because they have to manually give this document is the production order, and they have to
Right.
manually give it to the
Right.
production plant manager so he knows to schedule work. It's like, well, whoa, whoa, whoa! That you don't need to do any of that. There is no requirement from the point of printing the document. All of that goes away. Why
Right.
don't we just give a login to the plant manager, set him up, configure his dashboard so he can see production orders required? Like all of
Hmm.
this goes away. So it's quite easy to let some workflows seem as though they're required and the business
Yeah.
needs them for the new system, and it's
Yeah.
just not the case.
Right. Right.
I think I used this analogy before. It might have been when I was at work, but
Hmm.
it's like going to buy a new car, and you haven't bought one for 15 years, and you're concerned because the one that the car salesman is showing you hasn't got window handles. So you dismiss it. Go, well, I have a requirement of a window handle, so I can wind it down when I get too hot. So
Hmm.
no, no, it's gone. Have you heard of aircon? So
That's a
really
good one. I
challenge
always love when
this.
you bring that up.
Yeah, well, it's right, isn't it? Because she's like, you don't need this stuff anymore. That's not how things go anymore. There's such a
Right.
thing as like the first stage was batch processing, and then the next one from that is just real time automation of workflows.
Exactly.
So you shouldn't be looking for these manual buttons and go, well, I
Hmm.
need to click this, this, and this, and this. So can you make sure those buttons are in the new system for me, please? Like,
Right.
no,
Right.
there is no button. Not because the system doesn't support that, it's because it's all done behind the scenes. You don't need to go and click these 5 buttons anymore. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I've started to make that into a bit of a rant there. I didn't mean to sound like I was ratting. So
That was good though. That was good. I'm sure a lot of people feel that. I'm sure a lot of people
God
feel
damn
that.
it! And your other point, about dashboards, about reporting. I think it's just so much easier to get data out of the system,
Yeah.
but get data out of the system in a more controlled way, I guess, especially
Hmm.
with API endpoints and OData feeds. It allows you
Right.
to do ad hoc reporting. We should probably do an episode on something like Velixo, but
Totally.
there's OData feeds that allows you to integrate into, maybe you have a data warehouse,
Hmm.
maybe you're pulling in a few different data sources, and one of those is maybe market insights,
Yep.
and another is the sales data in your ERP, or production in your ERP. So
Hmm.
having the ability to hook straight in
Hmm.
directly through OData,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, or API endpoints, it's a lot easier than it ever used to be. So I guess back in
Hmm.
the way it used to be done in the day was things like jet reports, which
Hmm.
is obviously a way to get it out of the ERP, but it gets
Right.
into Excel and it's just like static, stationary, siloed data,
Yep.
with the ability for people to ruin it and do a whole host of nasties before sending it on to someone else. So having the ability to have links directly to your ERP, when it can't be tampered on its way into a data warehouse, it's going to be a
Hmm.
little bit more trustworthy. And I
Right.
think in terms of like master data management in that respect, it's a lot more robust.
Hmm.
And then you can have your pretty bar charts
Exactly.
and traffic light system cards and
Traffic
all
light
this kind
system.
of stuff.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. That's the only way I see data is color coded
Yeah,
now.
green, yellow, red. Is it good? Is it bad?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's right though, because that without going off on too much, but that means that now we're just managing the exceptions. Like all the
Yeah.
while that green card is green, I don't care about it. When it's red,
Hmm.
okay, I need
Hmm.
to spend some time looking at what's going
Right.
on. You're not having to manage every single one. You're just managing the
Right.
exceptions in the system.
Right.
Point number 5, a big one, especially with being on such an old system over the years, as you said right at the start of this episode, probably got a bunch of customizations in the system. So let's talk about the importance of, if you are in a position where you've got a 15-year-old ERP, and you've got some customizations in the system, and now you're looking at Acumatica. So talk me through this, because first of all, it's pretty easy to go, this is the customization I need. You need to
Hmm.
now build this customization in Acumatica. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
No, not at all. I would strongly advise against bringing the customization over unless it's
Oh.
very, yeah, unless it's very verticalized for your business. Like super verticalized, like it has, like you're like a chemical manufacturer and then you're doing some very specific, like, rate, yield analysis, and you have these ratios and things like that are there that that are not in Acumatica. Bring that over, but have an open mind in terms of what's available out of the box. And this goes with the vendor. If the vendor, understands, NAV and they understand Acumatica really well, they're going to be easy. They're going to be able to easily, point you in the right direction. Like we should do this. We should bring this over, but this customization doesn't have to be as big or massive, right? It could be smaller in Acumatica because there's already a lot of out of the box functionality. So it's kind of like going through and ripping apart and understanding all the customizations that you currently have in your system, whether that's reports or business logic changes, right? And then documenting that, seeing how close that you could essentially take those customizations and reports, monitor and put them into Acumatica, and how do you have to do additional customizations or no customizations at all?
Mhm.
So, you need to have a starting point, which is going to be the documentation of all your customizations. And let me tell you, some NAV custom databases are so customized. so customized that I can't even tell the difference sometimes. I'm thinking most are maybe not like that, but some are. And if you're like that, I would just say start from vanilla, start from scratch, and then kind of build the customizations as you need in Acumatica. Um, but if it's like I mentioned, some more verticalized customizations, then those type of customizations could essentially be thought through. See how you could bring that over in Acumatica if it requires maybe limited logic changes, or still you need that that big enhancement or whatnot. But yeah, customization is a big deal. NAV had its limitations in what it could do out of the box, and a lot of customers customized it. So with these newer ERP products like Acumatica, uh, a lot of what I would say some of the customizations that are there are probably not needed in Acumatica. So take
Yeah.
that, look at that very closely.
Yep. Yep. And it's so true and really important for NAV because this NAV that we're speaking about predates, and well, it's Cal code. So it predates any kind of module store or app store or bolt-ons to an ERP system.
Hmm.
So every customization you're going to have would have been
Hmm.
bespoke written probably for
Yeah.
your specific requirements. It's not like you could
Hmm.
just go to your Acumatica vendor and go, oh yeah, it's this one on the app source. This
Right.
is the one that we have. Like, let's assess that. It's not that case. And I guess here for me, this is where it's really important to try and be flexible. You as the business, try and be flexible if you can, and say to your ERP vendor, we are willing to change our business processes if it means it gets us onto this vanilla way of doing it in Acumatica.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
if it gets us 90% of the way there, then it's fine. So I think if you're rigid and go, nope, we absolutely need that customization, I would really look at who that's going to impact more, because it's like, do you do 100 hours of billable development on this customization and then the ongoing upkeep of that? Or do you just spend a few days looking at all your business process and going, could we just be at least flexible enough to tweak the way that we do things and maybe do this a little bit differently so we can get onto vanilla? It's going to be a
Right.
lot more beneficial if you can get there than be rigid and stick with the customizations because maybe it's the way that you've always done it. And I guess for me, this is sometimes where you just need to be cutthroat, and it's a case of, do we do this in our process because of regulatory issues
Hmm.
or corporate policies or whatever it happens to be? Or do we do this because it directly adds value to the customer?
Hmm.
If no for any of that, then really you could probably do with cutting it out. That's something you just
Hmm.
do because you've always done it like that. If it's not
Exactly.
directly adding value, if the customer doesn't care and you're not doing it for any kind of policy or law abiding reasons, there's probably an opportunity there for you to simplify that and again stick with the vanilla install.
Agreed. Absolutely. And you'll be surprised at how much customization sometimes they start out, they start using the customization and the customization just gets abandoned, no longer needed. They don't even use it, right? But then somehow that just ends up coming over to the next product again, the next version of the ERP. And it's like, wait, why do we need to bring this over? So, to take a look at that, and that's an important point. Customizations you have to have a well thought out plan on which customizations you want to bring over.
I really enjoyed this one. This is great. I love doing these kind of going from this system to this system.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to see that there are crossovers, but there are certain differences.
Mhm.
Obviously, check out our back catalogue if you missed the NAV to BC, but there are differences between that one to NAV to
Yep.
Acumatica instead. A little bit more nuanced on some of the things. Uh, Around the differences of everything from the high level look at on-prem versus SaaS versus
Yep.
the technical structure and architecture and
Mhm.
customization logic.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Good. Thank you very much, Nirav. Another great episode. Thank you once again. Always nice to be able to thrash out some of these stuff, and um, especially if it gets me ranting about redundant work. Until next time, I will catch
Yep.
you 2 weeks' time on the next episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Peter.